To discuss the latest in the Middle East, I am pleased to welcome former National Security Advisor to President Trump and former Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. Ambassador, pleasure to have you this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So Iran's drone attack on Kuwait's airport killed one person and injured 63 others. CENTCOM says they have intercepted Iran's attempted drone attacks on U.S. bases. President Trump says talks are ongoing, but according to Iran, they have stopped. Now, Ambassador Bolton, what is a realistic exit strategy here, and what timeline do you see for decisively ending this conflict on America's terms?
Well, it looks to me like there's still a long way from any kind of agreement, even on opening the Strait of Hormuz. This kind of attack by Iran, this was against Kuwait's civil international airport, like any we have in the United States. It was in no way a military target. And I think it shows the nature of the regime we're dealing with. So their word isn't worth that much. And I'm very worried that as each day goes by, what they're counting on, what the regime in Iran is counting on, is that it's harder and harder for the U.S. to go back to full-scale war, to finish the job that was largely completed during the initial attacks. And they're playing that their resolve is greater than the U.S., that they will outlast us. And they know that there's an election coming up in November. They don't worry about elections there, so they think time is on their side.
Well, President Trump sounded optimistic when asked when the Strait of Hormuz could reopen. Let's watch.
So you think the blockade will still be in place by Labor Day?
I don't know. I mean, I think it could be, but I think it's unlikely. I think that we'll have it. I think this will resolve itself fairly quickly. So everyone said it was going to be $300-400 a barrel. It's $98 a barrel. But that's not a big price to pay if you look at the possibility of them having a nuclear weapon.
And U.S. forces just took down a Botswana-flagged oil tanker attempting to sail toward Iran's Karg Island. Ambassador, you have said that the U.S. has significant leverage in Iran by controlling access through the strait. Can the administration use that leverage to protect global energy markets and force Iran to comply here?
Well, I think they can. I think it's legitimate for the U.S. to use military force to open the strait for commerce from the Gulf Arab states. Let their oil and natural gas get out. Let their other products get out. Keep the blockade against Iran. Keep the pressure on Iran financially, but help alleviate the extortion that the regime in Tehran's trying to enforce on everybody else by getting maybe not full pre-war production out, but a lot from the Arab states that could lower the price of oil internationally, lower the price at the pump in the U.S.
President Trump also confirmed the recent Axios report that claimed he had a very contentious call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, Bibi, we got to stop this. We got to stop it.
So President Trump insists that they, quote, work very well together as wartime leaders. From your experience, Ambassador, as a national security advisor, you've been in those war rooms. You've seen these meetings play out. Is this kind of candid, maybe tough talk between Trump and Netanyahu typical, or do other presidents simply hide some of these real conversations from the public?
No, look, I think they happened more than people like to admit. I think it happened between Netanyahu and Biden as Israel was responding to Hamas's barbaric terrorist attack on October the 7th, 2023, when the Biden administration wanted Israel to take it easy in the Gaza Strip. And Netanyahu was saying, look, this is an existential threat. And indeed, Hezbollah is an existential threat. It's an arm of Iran. It's one of the terrorist proxy groups in Iran's network. So when Israel goes after Hezbollah in Lebanon, and it's not the government they're going after, they're in talks with the government against the common enemy, Hezbollah. But when Israel defeats Hezbollah, that's a loss for Iran, too.
The U.S. Treasury just sanctioned Iran's largest crypto exchange to block them from the global financial system and weaken their economy. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent posted on X saying, quote, while Iran's economy is in free fall, the regime has chosen to co-opt digital asset technologies for its own corrupt agenda, including evading sanctions and transferring wealth out of the country. Iran's current economic chaos is proof that POTUS's maximum pressure campaign has been a success. Ambassador, has Operation Epic Fury been successful at weakening Iran's economy? President Trump has been mentioning this, as we just saw as well from Secretary Bessent. And what does that mean for the future of the regime?
Yeah, I think the 6 weeks of U.S. Israeli strikes significantly damaged Iran's military-industrial complex. It may not have done everything we would like to see, which is why the option to continue is still there, and Iran should know that. I think increased economic pressure remains. And let's also be clear, we're not sanctioning Iran not just for its nuclear program, but also for its support of international terrorism, not just in the Middle East, but really around the world. And that terrorist activity is something we're going to have to worry about whether the Strait of Hormuz is opened or not.
Ambassador, in terms of a timeline, where do you see this headed?
Well, I think from Trump's point of view, he'd like to declare a deal and victory and get out of this as soon as possible, see the Strait opened and see petroleum prices on global markets come down. But he also knows he doesn't want to make a bad deal and be criticized for doing effectively the same thing that Obama did. That's why I think increased pressure on Iran is necessary to show that we've got patience too, and we're not going to allow the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. We'll open it, at least on the Arab side, by force if we have to.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you so much for your insights this afternoon. Great to have you.
Glad to be with you.